Hello, we're going to be talking about the aftermath of the Copenhagen summit for EcoBuild. What does it mean? What is the responsibility of those who are engaged in projects to try to produce a low carbon environment for us all? Around the table with me I've got Nick Rainsford, MP for Greenwich and Woolwich, Chairman of the Strategic Forum for Construction and former construction minister, of course. Keith Clark, who's Chief Executive of Atkins, the biggest engineering consultancy in the country, Chairman of the Construction Industry Council. Mark Clare, alongside him, Group Chief Executive of our biggest house builder, Barratt Developments PLC, and on my right here, Sunand Prasad, partner in Penorum Prasad, and the immediate past president of the Royal Institute of British Architects. Nick Rainsford, optimistic or pessimistic after Copenhagen?
Neither. Like many such treaties, such international conferences didn't achieve all that it might have, didn't go nearly as far as some hoped, but nevertheless there was progress compared with the past. The United States are now engaged in the process, and providing we follow along in the next stages, then it will be seen as one step along the road.
Because you see, Keith Clark, there's been a lot of talk about the failure not just to get a legally binding treaty, which most people thought was pie in the sky anyway. Now, do you think the building blocks for the next stage of what you're interested in are there or not?
Yes, I think we had the American especially was game on. We've agreed 2 degrees is the amount that matters for the planet. We've agreed it is now the issue, despite the recession we must deal with as a global community, and everybody was there playing.
But we've got some real problems here, Mark Clare, because surely a lot of people are going to say, well, they couldn't get a deal. Why should we worry about it on our doorstep?
Well, I think what's disappointing for me was that we're not seeing that momentum building. I mean, the challenge here that we have in front of us is one that requires us to really accelerate the solutions. I think customers today aren't really getting it. I mean, yes, they're moving in the right direction, but I think the reality is that whatever happens in Copenhagen, we as an industry in this country have to get on with what's already been set out in front of us, and that's very, very clear, and we need to get on and deliver that.
And you will? And
we will.
Despite Copenhagen?
Despite Copenhagen, because we've already got legally binding agreements.
Well, there's going to be a climate change bill here.
Absolutely.
So, Sunand Prasad, that's quite an evangelical message. It's a direction you want to travel in. Do you fear that the way that Copenhagen turned out will make it more difficult?
The Copenhagen deal is a tremendous disappointment, because time is running out. It's not like Kyoto. Kyoto was difficult enough. That was quite late and too little too late in some ways. But there are some crumbs of comfort. There's no doubt that in the Accord there are some principles enshrined which we can now use. And the test of those will be whether in the next year something real happens. By the time we get to Mexico, will there be real movement?
We're talking here, Nick Rainsford, of course, about long focus and close-up. And in close-up, nothing in this country really changes. There are targets there. There is going to be a bill. Do you think what happens out there will affect what happens on the ground?
Clearly there is a disappointment that some countries are going to be seen to be dragging their feet by comparison with Europe, and those countries are in many cases very major emitters, and there has to be sustained pressure internationally, because whatever we do in the UK is small by comparison with what needs to be achieved internationally. But we have a leadership potential, and I think we have, in the course of the last few years, really made significant progress. We've now got to build on that, demonstrate what can be achieved in a sensible, cost-effective way.
So, Keith Clark, looking at it from an engineering perspective, if you agree with that as being the priority, what do you have to do?
We have to retrain people. We have to give them a new design parameter. And this is no longer the special project. We have to get the entire design team operating in a slightly different fashion. We're going to change our relationship as professionals with government. And I think with our supply chain, if we don't take this leadership position, and I'm working on the optimistic scenario, we will adapt our economy. But we will do it in a way where the UK certainly can be an overachiever in this to its economic benefit.
And finally, Mark Clare, from a house builder's point of view, what's your responsibility?
I mean, our responsibility is to deliver against the obligations that are already put out there in front of us, which is, for us, zero carbon homes by 2016, as I say, leading the world in that respect. But I think we mustn't forget the real elephant on the table is existing stock.
Yes, how many?
There's 26 million of
right.
them.
Exactly.
And the reality is that if we can push on technology and innovation for new build, you know, I'm hoping that a lot of that will spin off into the existing stock as well, because to be honest, if we don't deal with that, you know, we're still scratching the surface of this problem.
But that's where the secret is about whether we achieve what Keith says or not. It's a question of scale. Can we scale up what we already know? It's not so much, we must train more and we must gather more skills, but we already know enough to tackle the existing stock at the scale that's needed. And that will trigger the market response that we need.
Keith Clark, Mark Clare, Nick Rainsford, Sanand Prasad, thank you all.